Alrighty, kia ora koutou. Welcome everyone. Just like to welcome our new Chief Executive in waiting. Great to have you all with us for this workshop interactive, but I'll pass to Nigel D to do some intros. Thanks, Nigel.
Thanks, Your Worship. Welcome along. We've got a format for the workshop today, but first and foremost, I just thought I'd get a quick round the table. Those of you that aren't councillors or councillors in waiting or have the tag in front of you, if you'd like to introduce yourselves. Those of you that don't know me, Nigel Davenport, Chief Executive, Venture Timaru Economic and Tourism Agency for the district. So, Glenn, I'll get you, if you can introduce yourself.
I'm Glenn Patterson. I'm the chairperson of the CBD group, so we deal with a lot of issues down the main street, etc., etc.
Over to you, Ryan.
I'm a director for Timaru Developments, who we do a lot of developing subdivisions, what have you, around town. So, thank you.
Cool. And we'll head round. Just push the button. Thanks.
Anthony Burton, Director of Alpine Buildings, a nationwide construction firm. Been local here for a while, just taking an interest in this. Thank you.
John Wilson, Project Facilitator for Thompson's. So basically construction and try to get some other stuff happening in the communities. Yep.
Chris Carton from Stonewood Homes. We oversee residential buildings around South Canterbury.
Glenn McLaughlin, Davis Ogilvy, experience with land development, surveying, engineering and planning.
Thank you, everyone, and councillors obviously around the table as well, who I'm sure you all know. So we have an apology from Murray Turley, couldn't make it today. Councillor Pye is away as well. And we have Gary Aiken and Josh Newlove accepted, but yet to arrive. So I'm sure they'll be here at some stage. So all good.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for all coming here. My name's Elliot Higby. Thanks, OJ. My name's Elliot Higby. I'm the Legal Services Manager at Timaru District Council, and I've got Aaron Hackett here, who's the Planning Manager. And we've been discussing with elected members the transition away from the RMA and the coming into force of the Planning Act and the Natural Environment Act, or the other one, whatever it's called, and the imminent need to do some regional spatial planning and what that means for Timaru. And one of the things that we've identified is that we need to take the lead on how we engage with the community and stakeholders, and we need to figure out how we're going to do that, because once the draft spatial plan is drafted, it goes to a independent hearing panels process, and that's a very legalistic, formal process, dominated by obnoxious lawyers, and then the appeals are really restricted. The appeals are only on law, and so it's basically a short, sharp legal review of the draft spatial plan. So as a community, I think that we need to figure out how we're going to engage in the drafting part, the pre-spatial plan drafting part. So this is an engagement with you all as stakeholders in the sort of development sector in the community about how we should engage. So it's kind of like we're coming here with like a real open mind about how we should be doing this, and we're really keen to see the dynamic and get the feedback on how we can make that engagement on the draft spatial plan meaningful, and try and bake in some social licence and get the, I guess, the aspirations of Timaru District and its communities baked into the drafting of the spatial plan, so that when we're in that formal process, we know that we've captured as much as we can the community's aspirations into that draft document. How do we want to do this? So we've got some slides, and we've got some questions, and I haven't really read through the slides. Take it away, Aaron.
Yeah, so I think Elliot's provided a really good background and understanding of why we're here. Just flag that we're not considering this to be formal engagement or consultation. Based on the learnings from today, we'll develop something that can be rolled out to the wider community. So thank you for being here as, I guess, our test cases to see how we put our messaging together and how we can best engage with the community. This spatial planning is going to be occurring nationally at a regional level, and it's going to be quite a big shift away from the existing Resource Management Act. If I'm to talk in planner jargon, the regional spatial plan will be one of the overarching documents for the new system, and really is the communities in each district's opportunity to create their blueprint for how they want to grow. It requires councils across each region to enter into a process agreement with all the other councils, and one of the key questions that needs to be resolved as part of that process agreement is how each council is going to engage with the communities, stakeholders and developers in coming up with these spatial plans, because I think once the spatial plans are locked in, they'll be quite hard to change because we'll have to go back through that regional process. And then also to implement the spatial plans, it won't be about each council having a district plan underneath. It'll be about the government giving us our off-the-shelf zoning and applying that as kind of like a paint by numbers. So it's really, to some extent, the new system as proposed, removing the abilities of councils to decide some of the nuances around how their communities develop, because once you've got your spatial blueprint, the zoning will effectively allow for people to do in Timaru what they can do in Auckland and so on and so forth, which is a bit of a shift. And it's also, I guess, one of the main shifts is removing the concept of amenity and character from it. So we really are looking towards moving towards more master planning in front of us, rather than some of the criticism for the current system has been doing planning based on the rear vision mirror.
I'll just pick up on that a little bit. The rear view mirror is basically like your boring data, your stats, and that's where you get trapped in just repeating the past. And so I think there's two kinds of evidence that I would encourage us all to be thinking about. One is the qualitative evidence about what do our visitors see on the ground in their interface with development. And then another thing I think we're really curious about is where should Timaru be going to get more pinpointed, deep dive, quantitative evidence to support any changes to our current planning framework or to support aspirations in that spatial planning process. So if you think that we need to go off and investigate X, Y, or Z, that's some really important feedback that we'd like to grab.
Yes, so that leads us to why we're here today and wanting to act now. The advice we've been giving to our elected officials is that if you're happy with the district plan that's just kind of reached its completion now, then that would be quite an easy process to just roll that over into the spatial plans and get locked in moving forward. But if that's not what the community wants, now is our opportunity to revisit some of that and paint a different future for Timaru. So I guess, the whole premise of today is we've got some questions to come up on the next slide. Elliot and I are here to provide some technical advice where needed, but otherwise we're hoping you as a group can have a conversation and we can take some lessons around how we can best move this forward so that when the new legislation lands in the next month or so, we're best placed to kick into that with our technical hats on behalf of the Timaru District Council and its communities, recognising that based on the draft legislation, once that lands, if the timeframes don't change, we've got about 14 to 15 months as a region to do a spatial plan. So it's a very quick process. That's in comparison to district plan review, which took probably in excess of 10 years. So it's going to be quick, it's going to be fast, and we need to put our best foot forward.
I'll just add one more thing. Don't underestimate the change from management to planning. That's a really significant change. historically, we've tried to do really complicated things using the resource management's planning approach. It hasn't worked. And so the new planning framework is intentionally a totally different way of looking at it, and that is why there's a focus on stakeholders and people in the development community in the drafting of the spatial plan, because I think what they're looking for is the interaction between the different infrastructure providers and developers, and getting a spatial consciousness between each of those different actors. And so it's more sophisticated, and it's going to be integrated with new funding tools. But I think the short point is that it is planning. It is, and it'll be different. And so that's going to require us to be a lot more sophisticated and integrated with infrastructure providers and developers at council. And yeah, I think that's kind of my caution from a high-level legal point of view, is that this is actually going to be quite different. Okay, should we? Cool. So yeah, we're also kind of hoping for a conversation between our guests and the elected members around how they sort of see these topics and how they feel about them and what they're seeing on the ground. And then, like we suggested, like we hinted, we're going to be thinking in the background about how we're going to advise elected members on options for developing this engagement process to feed into that drafting of the regional spatial. Cool.
Okay. Scotty is Chair of Development and Growth. Do you want to say anything at all before we kick into this?
Thanks, Nigel. Thank you, gentlemen. Probably only really that as Aaron and Elliot have alluded to, us as elected members, we've come on board and we've seen this, the district plan process, which spanned a number of trienniums, which helped to create what we have to work with in terms of growth and development. And as we all know, there's lots of restrictive sides to the district plan. And as much as we have come on board and we've pushed really hard to develop an enabling council as such, we have these heavy restrictions on a lot of the stuff that we hear from the community that they want to do. So this for us is the opportunity to engage with those who have told us, if we have this, we could probably achieve this. These are our aspirations, but this is what's holding us back. So this opportunity here is key for us, our once in 30-year opportunity to change some of that stuff and develop this all-important spatial plan that can deliver what we hear that our community wants to deliver, and also what you have been telling us. So this is why your input today is really important to help frame up how we secure that data and that information, because you're part of that data going forward to form the spatial plan.
Thanks, Scotty. So I've been asked by the Mayor and Scotty to help facilitate the discussion, and you'll see there when we sent out the information to you all, there was some sort of questions to really kick things off, and the top one really is that sort of broader, what could we be and why, what do we need moving forward, and then it sort of hones in a wee bit more as well. So this is the one thing I would say is sort of one removed from council, although sitting in the economic development space. The pleasing thing, this is quite a step change from council in their approach to their planning. And very much demand-driven and deep engagement with the community, both starting with this informal conversation with everyone in the room today, but it's going to set the scene for, as Scotty rightly says, a once in a 30-year opportunity to really step into this together. So look, first things first, we sent these questions out, so hopefully you've all done a wee bit of homework. There's no gold stars applicable today, but we'll see how we go with some of the feedback. So just really to kick things off, that first one really is a bit of an all-encompassing one. What is it that the Timaru District needs to thrive moving forward? Is it people? Is it land availability? Is it, resilience around our power and water, all of those things and then some. But really keen to hear from those of you in the room, as are the elected members, and I'm sure the elected members will have some thoughts to say as well. So maybe if I could kick in and pass the baton straight to you, Glenn. You were looking at me. You didn't look away quick enough, fella, so hard luck.
Can I say something really briefly?
Oh, sorry, Nigel.
Sorry, and you won't offend us in saying anything. We know that the district plan hasn't delivered. We wanted it to be aspirational. It isn't aspirational. We've got a small window in time to get this right before amalgamations, and so we need to set the Timaru district up for success within whatever that wider entity looks like. And so, the opportunity is now. So just throw it on us. It is going to be a genuine partnership to get this through with the likes of yourselves as sort of key stakeholders and elected members to drive this timetable, because everything's happening really fast with a small window. So we won't be offended is what I'm trying to say. So just throw it at us.
Thanks, Mayor Nigel, and 100% agree with everything you just said, given where the growth management strategy started and ended. I guess for the district and some of my own opinion, but we deal with a lot of different sectors, whether it be industrial, commercial, residential, and the rural sector, and you need all of those working together. And I think as a starting point, what you need for economic growth is obviously jobs, and so getting the industrial and commercial side of things sorted with the vision is the absolute key. And probably before we get into detail about residential and other zoned areas, it might be an opportunity for Anthony and John to talk to some of their experience within the Washdyke area, because experience indicates to us that when you're not shovel ready and you haven't got funding mechanisms in place, you can have zone land, but that doesn't mean that developable capacity is there ready to go. And so you've got to have all of those things lined up to realise a vision. So the expansion zone's a good example of where there was zone land, but there wasn't a stormwater management plan in place, so we had to get an ECAN consent for that area, and then the infrastructure to support it. And over that time, numerous companies came and went. Some settled in, but others knocked on the door. There was no certainty, no cost mechanisms to provide that certainty in timing or cost, and they moved to another part of the country, whether it be Ashburton, Rolleston. So missed opportunities for our district. And that's the reality, is that we are in competition with neighbouring towns, but the fundamentals of Timaru are there. Like, we've got a good operational port, good rural catchment, and infrastructure. Like, you look at what Timaru has in the way of infrastructure, it's like New Plymouth. We've got the ability to service twice the number of population, but it starts with jobs. And so I could take a pause now and whether or not open it up to Anthony and John to maybe talk about some of the industrial side and from what they see.
Thanks very much, Glenn. Honing in on that initial one to start with, around what do we need to thrive, be great. Thanks, gents.
I'll lead out. Yeah, like Glenn said and Fawn said, I've got to be very careful what I say, but so the land like is quite, and I always, and I've said to you, Nigel, before, let's go to the bottom end of Linden Street and the fact that it comes to a dead end on TDHL land, So the private sector's, is investing, doing its can, paying for the roads, doing stuff, getting stuff shovel ready so it can pivot and activate really quick. So if someone does come across, and I've had it where I can't remember what it is. There's been a number over the years, but I remember showing, and you're standing there, this grubby old paddock, and going, oh well, you're trying to sell the dream,
And then, and is there anywhere else? And you show them a picture of Ashburton or Oamaru, and they go, oh, and it's set, the road's in, the crossings available, the infrastructure's in, the lawn's mowed, the mayor's just about out there banging in pegs, getting in trouble doing it. But that's the type, and when you're working with those developers who, like Iplex Pipes and stuff like that, that might have been, that it just capitalised, the developer was able to bang, go, and transform. We need a transformer, needs boom, sorted, done. And I think that speed of activation is really, really important, but the only way you can really activate that, move at that speed, is that you've got the land, the roads that's set up. And I feel the private sector has invested heavily to do that and to set themselves up for success. And I just think in the potentially there needs to be a conversation in that TDHL governance space. What are we doing as part of that team? Because someone made that comment about that collectively all working together. Well, if that road was tidied up and finished and that was all set, but that's just the one example that probably affects the both of us. But yeah, really that set up for success, shovel-ready land, good to go, and also I think that the other wee thing too is in that. Which just in the corridor through Timaru, and I don't know how this will affect it from a planning point of view, but it's never going to happen in our lifetimes, and I understand that, but a dual carriageway coming down through Canterbury down through Otago, so this is the opportunity now to be having that discussion around what a dual carriageway would look like through Timaru, so that we're set up, so if central government says, righto, yeah, we've won the lottery, we're going to punch that road through and down from Ashburton all the way down to Oamaru or Dunedin, that Timaru is ready to receive it. And I think at the moment we're choked. And the fact that our logistics is a massive part of what we do.
On that note, the dual carriageway, we have got funding from NZTA signed off to do the business case, which is that port to port. So I think that'll be happening in this financial year. But still, obviously, the project itself is not funded, but it's a step in the right direction.
Oh yeah, I'll back that up 100%. Obviously, if we're going to thrive, we need good businesses. Some from around here came to our open day at our new premises just recently, which explained a few things here that we chose to stay here. We're a nationwide company. We do more in the North Island than the South Island. So we could have moved other places, but we chose to invest here, and it was difficult back in those days. So there was no 5-acre blocks of land, which is what we needed, that we could move straight into. So we worked with Glenn and others to achieve it. So, yeah, number one, you need to get good businesses here, and if you're going to have good business, you need good developed industrial parks. I'll back up the Oamaru and Ashburton thing, and some of those sections are quite large, because if you're going to grow, we need employment, and you need the bigger businesses to actually be able to do that. And then obviously you need good local amenities and things to attract good staff would be the other key thing that we probably struggle with. We've brought a lot of staff down from North Island roundabout. I was telling some before, and I've said it before as well, we had employed a finance accountant moved him down from the North Island, and within 2 years he wanted to move to Ashburton because it's 200k cheaper for the same house. Basically I say it's because it's flat land, easy to develop, and less excavation costs. I don't know quite how we fix that in Timaru, but it's a challenge. You've got to have good businesses and good places for people to go. Some good things have happened, of course, like even some of our staff, like the Bay Playground and other things which are going on for older generations too, but a lot of people that are moving into town, they've got kids, they want to see what are their kids going to be doing in the area. You my comment?
Thanks, Anthony. Chris, just from your side of things, Stonewood obviously very heavily involved in the residential market. Do you want to make a comment around your thoughts around, from a housing perspective, potentially what what you sort of see that we might need?
Yeah, so for us,
moving
basically,
forward?
it's land availability, cheaper land. Our model's sort of changed over the last 18 months to 2 years to be more, we're finding the turnkey option being a lot higher seller for us because it's a lot easier for people to get finance on. It's a completed product, ready to move in. So we're probably 80% of what we're building now is turnkey, where we're self-financing it all. So we're forever buying land, developing it. We buy a lot off Ryan and Timaru Developments. We work pretty closely with them. But what we're finding is just the cost of land's just going up and up and up in price. So like what I was saying before, people go to Ashburton, 200k cheaper to build a house, and that's all just land price. The cost of building, I don't think, is too different between here and Ashburton and so on. But their land up there, I don't know what the prices are of it now, but I remember when we had the franchise up there, the land was sort of 150k cheaper than what land was here. And I still believe that it's a whole lot cheaper up there than what we're paying here. So for us, it's, I guess, getting people into brand new housing for as cheap as possible, because no one really comes to us and wants to spend $2 million on a house. It's, people coming to us wanting, and we're finding the size of houses that people are wanting are smaller and smaller to fit within their budgets. So yeah, really for us is more land and more of that sort of cheaper land. I mean, we're not typically architectural builders, we're group home builders building to a price point. So yeah, the more of that cheaper housing that we could get, the more people that will build. Yeah.
Just on that, can I expand a wee bit and ask you, we're seeing, we've noticeably seen over probably the last 10 years especially, quite a diverse communities now, people coming from different countries coming into Timaru, having lived different, I suppose, if I could put it that way, whether it's inner and near city apartments or smaller houses, as you say. So, you talk about the land price, the availability of land for the, what is the stock standard sort of Kiwi build. Any comments you want to make around the diversity of the housing stock?
No, they're still very, very standard. We don't change for different ethnicities. We don't change a whole lot for them. They might have a few wee quirks with tiled areas here and there, or an extra sink in a pantry, or
Thinking more, the question was more related, sorry, I didn't explain myself very well. Are you seeing or hearing of demand for, people wanting to live a bit different, whether it's our older population, some of them wanting to live closer to town, apartments, those sorts of things?
No,
Are you seeing and hearing that, or is that not your market? Yeah.
Very little inquiry for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or even two-storey housing, very little interest in that. I think we've probably built 5 or 6 two-storey houses in the 15 odd years that we've been building. Whereas you go to areas like Christchurch and it's all multi-storey, all crammed in there, whereas we don't get the interest for that. Yeah, I guess that's where we are blessed. We generally do have the blocks of land that we do have are big enough to build single-storey houses on. But yeah, certainly not so much inner city living for us. Yeah.
Chris, could you give us an idea in terms of, we're hearing all the time that we're not getting the population shift. We're seeing development, we're seeing houses being built. So can you give us sort of a general high-level percentage of people you're selling to? Are they people who are moving out of existing homes and building new, and therefore vacating and creating opportunities for other people, or are these people new to Timaru?
We are seeing a lot of late we've had a lot of people moving from out of town, moving from Christchurch and so on, and also we're seeing probably a few younger people sort of moving out of their first home into a brand new house. They're realising that their old house is pretty cold over winter, so to be in a warm and dry house is sort of become more of a thing. So it's not, I don't think you can put it all in one area. It's sort of, we're getting a bit of everyone. We're building for retired people, we're building for people coming in off farms and, wanting to downsize. We've just got a elderly lady moving down from Christchurch, who she might have retired off a farm, moving close to her family, things like that. Yes, I wouldn't say there's a real direction of a group of people as such. It's just sort of a bit of everything, yeah.
Cool, thanks, Chris. Glenn, sorry, Rhino, yeah.
Yeah, so one thing that we are trying to do, look, we've developed a lot of land in Pages Road, and we have a lot of land up there, which fits a bracket, which is the higher bracket, and getting to Andrew's point of having property that is affordable for staff. It really needs to be flat land. We've got a few areas that we're talking about of building. It's got to be scale so we can make it cheaper. But the key is we need to have that flat land, and it's obviously close to town. So town's going to have to grow. We just can't keep in that wee ring and no, you can't go out that ring. Well, hello, we're going to have to start spreading our wings, and if we're going to grow, we're just going to have to find new flat areas to build. And we have them, but I think for some reason, and whether it's legalities or whether we're too scared to grow or the statistics say no, well, the statistics say no to a lot of things, but if you haven't got a pie in the oven, you can't buy it at the shop, can you? So you've got to have things ready, shovel ready to go, staff come down. Andrews, he needs some staff, Thompson's needs staff, Rooney's needs staff. Where do these staff live? Because there's nowhere for them to live. They can't, you can't go and buy a section for 400,000 when they're on not high salaries. These guys are workers, they need to be in areas where, they're perfectly fine. Flat sites between 500 and 600 square metres, they can purchase for mid 200s, and I think that'll help a lot of businesses keep their staff and bring people here. So I think that's one of the things we need to do is start opening our eyes and starting to spread our wings a bit more, and don't be scared of it. Because at the end of the day, the developer pays. So if they don't sell, it's no skin off anyone else's nose apart from mine. So, I just think that we need to start sort of spreading our wings, getting cheaper housing, affordable housing, and, it's amazing how it grows. So.
Thanks, Rhino. Plenty of nods at the head of the table for some of those comments. Glenn, can we shift across to you? That first question really, appreciate, Glenn, you're a retailer, middle of town, in the CBD. Obviously retail, very challenging, I suppose, is the way to put it. If you could focus in on maybe that first topic. And look, please don't restrict yourself to the CBD or retail. If you want some other comments, please fire away.
First of all, thanks to the other guys that have had their say, because a lot of it, that development also helps in the revitalisation and growth of the retail sector and the CBD as well. So without that infrastructure being put in place, it makes us very difficult to grow the CBD to the way that we want it, or the vision. But, I think we need a real strategic vision on our CBD and where we want to lead it to. We think inner city living can become a real thing within the CBD, but we need the infrastructure and things to make that happen. We need to encourage growth within our CBD region as well. We've got challenges with online sales, which is killing a lot of retail around the traps, and also new retail development that's also having an effect with it. We also have a challenge with a lot of landlords down the CBD. They need to engage a little bit more and want to fill their shops rather than just land banking and sitting on them. We do see a little bit of that as well. We've got to make our CBD centre shoppable, which also means looking at the pavers that are there, taking it head on and fixing the problem so that our elderly people aren't having problems and slipping on it. And, I've also spoken with the Mayor at great length with the rates differential that we've got down there at the moment. I think those are the main things that we see as helping with growth within the CBD. We're doing a lot of things at the moment. We're engaging with the landlords now, trying to see exactly what they want and how we can facilitate and help grow new businesses, or even just pop-up shops that can develop into new retail businesses within the CBD as well. We're also engaging with the local retailers and not only retailers but also the businesses that are there to find out what they want, what we can do to help grow and develop their business into ways that they need to make it work.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Glenn. Yeah, go for your life. Yep.
Because I've certainly tried. I've certainly tried. Over 15 years since Russell Ibsen, way back, tried with CBD. I think the new anchor tenant, which I've said before, the big anchor tenant is the healthcare space in a retirement village or something like that. I think somewhere where it's got a view, that's the anchor. Our demographics illustrating that. That's an offering that we could potentially do. So an area of where, you know, you can walk down to the cafe, you can go to the theatre, you're close to the hospital, and you can watch the ships rolling in and listen to a train. I mean, that, you know, that literally would be quite good. But then when you look at that, you look at your district plan at the moment, you look at Station Street. I pitched that to a developer. We could put a row of precast apartments along there. We can't anymore because there's some holes, some clay cliffs that, you know, it's all protected now. So, which I pointed out to you. So the district plan, looked at another one, buildings protected, won't be able to go there. You've got this, they're pulling in two different directions. So if there's anything I would suggest when we're looking at this new spatial plan is you're looking at it and you're going, well, just any opportunity is better than no opportunity. So maybe some conversations around, does the clay cliffs of Station Street need to be protected? No one can visit them, no one can see them. I don't think they're ever used. They're dug by my grandfather. Doesn't really matter. Bang, you could put there's an opportunity there. Do these buildings need to be protected? Do they have more value being developed? You know, that's a discussion. And just generally as well, and then do a few of us jump on a plane and go and pitch to a healthcare. Say, hey, what if we could, a hunk of land over here, top end of Stafford Street, looks out over the wharf or whatever it is, can we put something together? That aspirational side of things. Because I think retail and working with the large format retailers and stuff like that, I mean, we all know what's at showgrounds now, but I think even they are very, very conservative in their approach. So doing a standalone large retailer to come in and develop some footfall, probably never going to happen in the CBD now. And then the only other thing I want to say is I've often thought about that activation of youth in our CBD, and it always seems crazy. We've got these buildings sitting there doing nothing. Well, let's just potentially look at knocking one of them down and putting a outdoor basketball court under lights and start getting our kids down there doing stuff. Let's put a skate park or something in the CBD and try to activate some things that way.
Thanks very much, John. Just a couple of comments from me as well in support of that is that, you know, we're seeing if I can put it this way, and I mean it in the greatest respect too, the 60, because I'm one of them there, but the 60, 70-year-olds are the 40-year-olds of, 50 years ago. They're more active, they're more willing, and have a desire to be part of our community. And we're seeing, those people looking at moving into the near CBD to be actually part of the community. I've spoken to a couple of elderly people who are living on their own in big houses. They want to actually be part of our community, and those opportunities you've spoken to, whether it's in or near city living that has been touched on, or anchor tenants along those lines. And the thing around a CBD is always the vibrancy of a CBD is people staying there for longer. We come in to shop, we come into work. Living in the CBD or near the CBD, notwithstanding the comments you make. I understand exactly what you're saying, Chris. But I think there's a market to be made almost there. And there's developers that have progressed apartments, the John Simpson of this world and others, Rhino up on the top, Roger as well. And there's certainly opportunities there, and I take your point pretty clearly. So,
So with that in mind, what John's just brought up, and he's brought up a number of things that have made it very difficult in that environment. So we're here today to talk about the potential of what the new environment looks under that. So can you talk to the fact that controlled activities are going to be removed, non-compliant activities, a lot of those legal things are going to be compressed now. So where we're going with the new RMA, are these things now more possible for councils, or specifically us, to activate?
Yeah, I think definitely insofar as not having seen the final legislation or what the government's going to implement through their standardised zoning and rule provisions, the direction from the government is very much to remove barriers to development. It's putting the onus, we touched upon heritage buildings. The draft legislation introduced a concept of regulatory relief for a number of matters like heritage buildings, but also outstanding natural landscapes or significant natural areas where if there's something that the community wants to protect, then the council in protecting it's got to provide some sort of relief to those landowners that own that heritage building, to recognise that they're protecting it to some extent with a lens on providing a service back to the community. What that looks like, I don't know, but I think what that will do is when the new plans are being drawn up and there's decisions being made around what heritage buildings are listed and what aren't, will bring a lot of that back to the drawing board, because communities just won't be able to afford to protect everything, and the onus on protecting them won't just sit with the landowners anymore. So I think there's definitely a shift. I touched upon in the introduction around character and amenity being removed as a bit of a consideration, and that has been a fundamental driver for lots of district plans in protecting character and amenity of residential areas or CBDs and what their uses are. I think the intent is definitely to strip that out and make it a bit more market-led and driven. So I think the new system will be a lot more developer-friendly and allowing for different ideas to happen without having so many hoops to jump through.
And I'll just try and summarise that. Yes, but you'll need to show demand and that you've thought about how the externalities, particularly around infrastructure, are managed. So I think if you come up with a package of what the community wants and show that it's integrated with those supporting aspects, be it roading, state highway stuff, hospitals and so forth, if you can show that, then yes, it'll be essentially permitted. That's my short take on that, and so that really puts the onus on the community to say what they want, and for this council to receive it and take it on board, and then for this council to the extent it can, coordinate those other adjacent service providers. So that's kind of our challenge, is to trying to think about this whole thing differently. We're not running around trying to manage public nuisance. We actually think we can get better outcomes by capturing what people want and trying to make it happen for them. Like, the purpose of local government's going to change very specifically to just providing the infrastructure. There's an interesting question here about where the vision and economic development sort of roles of council sits, and so that's something I'm thinking in the back of my head is how much do you need a vision from council to thrive, and how much of it should be led by the community and so forth, because our function is very much just to put out the infrastructure, put out the regulatory services, and let the market and the community take it away.
Just on that, Aaron, one of my frustrations over time has been looking in the rear vision mirror on future development areas. To Ryan's point, we all know where the flat land is at Washdyke, and if we can get smaller sections, the land price will go down and develop. Are we able to throw that out? Because every time we bring it up, we hear, it was marked 10 years ago in our plan that the bottom of Kanua Road and College Road, that's Old Kent Road, the out-of-town planners tell us it's Mayfair. But no one's built there for 30 years because it's crap land. Yet we've got flat, cheap land, and I hear, oh, you're not near a school, you're not near this. You know, we've decided to develop the other side of Pages Road, which you'll need an excavator on. Are we allowed to, in this new regime, say, that's the land we want to go for and get on with it?
That's very much the direction of government, but it is, officers, I guess our responsibility is to provide the council advice on that, because that comes at a cost, and one of the main roadblocks to realising that development has been about making sure all the infrastructure and the likes are coordinated so that it's shovel ready and ready to go, and all the different providers are sequenced in a way that can enable that to occur. And I think that's where that's not a Timaru problem. You look at examples in Queenstown and Auckland where there's suburbs that have been developed and they have to get multiple trucks in each day to pump out the holding tanks for the suburb because the infrastructure is not ready. So I think the government's very much around integrating that infrastructure across the board. And when I use the term infrastructure, I'm not just talking about pipes in the ground, it's schooling and healthcare, so that you're not getting whole suburbs developed without schools, because in the government's mind that's a key piece of infrastructure. So I think the spatial planning exercises to make all councils lift their bar in that regard, but it's also going to be a driver for the government to lift the bar in which they operate across all their public sector services that require infrastructure as well. So short answer is yes, the government wants all that to be considered as part of the spatial plan so the community is making good decisions. And then that, to touch upon what Elliot raised before, brings us back to a funding discussion. Minister Bishop's favourite tagline for a while was growth pays for growth, and that's, I don't like that tagline, but it really is a discussion around what is the cost of growth and demand change. So you'll hear Elliot and I trying to use growth and demand. We might not have big population growth, but the demand for our services or the size of the housing will change, which has a flow-on effect. So use that term interchangeably, but how do we understand the cost associated with providing that for the community and make sure not just the spatial plan, but all the council's key documents around asset management and infrastructure strategies and long-term plans all talk to it, so that when it's ready and the developers want to go, the council and the wider government and community are at the same stage to help enable that.
So, since I've been here in Timaru, 2010 I think it was, so I've been here 16 years, and I have to say we as a community are the most conservative bunch I've ever met. And when you try and do something new, you find every roadblock you can find, whether it's the council, whether it's a bunch of people who just don't like the change or whatever. And I think that's held us back. Secondly, while the district plan is there, I think we have lacked a spatial plan, because while a district plan sits there, actually no one can visualise to see what exactly is going where. And what I've witnessed in 16 years is stuff pops up in all places, and it's never ever really been planned. And you know, we have blocks here now that it's crying out for development, but we don't know what to do with them. And we actually haven't stood back and gone, what makes sense for these particular pieces of land? Take Barnard Street to Stafford Street to Walkham Street to this one. It's owned by 7 different entities. Yet the whole damn lot is sitting in derelict or sitting in car parks. Now, if that can't, but we've got no vision. We don't know what to do with it. So what do? We plonk a museum there and do up the old theatre and then go, now what do we do with the rest of it? We go across the road to Stafford Street. We muck around there and actually didn't get anywhere. The damn thing still sits there. And I think we just lack that vision, and we lack that actual plan to actually we can all hold on to. And I think time is now to actually get moving and actually do some of the stuff. Yes, there's lots of regrets that we've done, and I would suggest we have, but it's time now to pull the community together and go, what does this thing really look like? Washdike, it's clear to me what needs to happen there. However, we've got to be very careful on the cost of it because the sea is rising underneath and that creates costs, but we need to work that through. And yes, you're right, Washdike out to Pleasant Point, there is flat land there, but I'm not convinced that there isn't other land available neither. So I think it's time now to actually really stand back and think hard. And unfortunately, we don't have much time because the district plan has landed. The spatial plan, the Canterbury spatial plan, will be based on that district plan, unless we in the next 2 or 3 months come up with something that is smarter, that convinces whomever is pulling the Canterbury one together that this looks different.
Thanks, Nigel. Can we we've touched on it a wee bit as well, just that second one, what's been lacking in supporting development to date? If there's any comments to make around that, around the table, please step into your microphone. And it's not, when we talk about lacking supporting development, what's been lacking in supporting development to date, this isn't probably specifically council related, it could be broader than that as well. So yeah, if there's any comments to make on that, otherwise we'll step into number 3.
I could make a couple of comments. I think the district plan, it's landed where it landed, and if you went back right to the growth management strategy, it was very much looking in the rear vision mirror, and to Nigel's comment, there wasn't a vision about where do we want the district to go. It was just, okay, well, what growth has there been? Let's just project that forward. And that's not really or it is a plan, but it's not a very good plan if you actually have a different vision for the district. And what that's meant is that, and I think when you get an economist looking at the numbers, you can look through it at any lens, and there can be a whole lot of different assumptions made in terms of land availability. Is that land actually available? What type of land is it? Is it developable in terms of infrastructure or topography? And there's like even the rolling country on the northern side of I think FDA's 1, 2 and 4, for the assumptions of that you can get 700 square metre sites on all of that land, you lose so much in green space and where the roading needs to be that in terms of it's an overly optimistic approach to the yield that you get in terms of and then actually what the market demands. Like that area is an area where it probably commands larger land sizes, whereas Washdike for cheaper housing it makes a whole lot more sense. And so you need this diversity of topology where you've got the central town or the CBD, maybe apartments and tighter living is like that's the market there. And as you move further out, that and the Pages Road area is where you've got your higher end, larger sections, and then Washdike is your affordable housing. But you need a lot more zone land than what the economists think, because you need different people doing different things at different times, and you need to be supporting the demand that exists within the community, and that could range from low-cost housing through to high-end housing. Infrastructure is the key to all of that, and Elliot's touched on it, and Aaron. What's held Timaru back is there hasn't been a development contribution policy. So there's been nothing put away for a rainy day or for growth. Timaru's done really well in terms of managing infrastructure, in terms of capital renewals and in terms of ageing assets and the likes. But when it comes to growth, there's just no funding mechanisms there that, unless it's a financial contribution that's specific to a catchment or a development, then there's nothing there from the public domain to help facilitate growth. And that's probably one of the constraints that's occurred. And it's quite likely, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out in terms of the DC policy and what government influence in that space. But you do need a hybrid type model where you are taking a set DC for the likes of infill development, but there might be catchment specific funding required as well, where a user pays. But without taking that DC for infill development, then you've actually, you haven't got anything in your coffers to help with growth. So it's development and funding for growth and being consent ready or consent burden. Like the district plan, how it landed and the direction it went with these future development areas, all it did was really kick the can down the road in terms of, yes, it identified where, okay, well, these are logical locations for growth, but you still have to go through a plan change. A plan change is so expensive and so the time and cost associated with going through that, hundreds of thousands, and it's not months, it's in the years. And so how does that enable reaction to demand? Demand in the market can change on a dime, and so you've got to be enabling and get out of the road to enable development with a framework rather than this piecemeal approach. And that's where the controls like deferred zoning mechanisms, where you're not reinventing the wheel in terms of is it appropriate and the zoning needing to change through a public process again. It's a case of, okay, well, infrastructure staging is the trigger for that land to be opened up, and you have the mechanisms in place that control that as well as funding.
To add to that, the district plan is fundamentally flawed when it came to our future development areas, because this council didn't back them and we haven't planned for that growth. And my view is we need to fully reset the FDAs, and this is the opportunity to do it. And I know that Aaron and Elliot and everyone in this room knows that needs to happen. And so if it's identifying zone land areas, then we need to do take it incredibly seriously so this council can plan for the future and do it, because that's what happened with the district plan. Is it was all good and well talking about FDAs, bringing them forward or whatever. This council was not ready, and so that is what needs to change, that mindset. And so I welcome these conversations very much. So we need to have an infill focus, but that was too heavily focused in the district plan, and we need to look at how we support not just the Wasdyke areas. Temuka has absolute potential. Pleasant Point, Geraldine has flat land, and so we need to look at how we integrate those communities just as much. So yeah, loving the conversation. Let's get shit done.
Nigel, I've just got a question for the CEO. He mentioned that we're a sort of a funny lot here in Timaru.
I wasn't referring just.
Yeah, no, but I agree. If we Timaru, if we build it, people will come. People follow. There's a lot of followers in Timaru. Very few people will get off their bums and do it, but there's a lot of followers. And the other question is, you mentioned that Wash, you weren't sure where there's plenty of other buildable areas for affordable homes that are flat in Timaru. Can you explain where they are?
I didn't say they're affordable. I said there are.
That's what.
No, that's not what I said. I said there are properties there, but unfortunately they're wanting premiums for them, so they sit idle.
Yeah.
Land banked because they're waiting for the golden egg to come when someone does something with it. And I think a lot of those people are actually, simple. They're land banking.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is he's quite correct. Up Pages Road is for a different demographic. The demographic we need in Timaru now is to keep people in affordable housing. There's plenty of land up Pages Road. We're developing a lot up there, and we're going to continue to develop a lot up there. But the key that we're finding out, and OJ and Graham Wilson and Stu will know because they're ex-real estate agents, the market, we don't have anything available for the common people or workers to build and live. There's just nowhere to go. And there is nowhere to build. Absolutely nowhere. Because I live and breathe it, and I'm telling you, there is nowhere to go. So...
Some of our developments could have been done differently. Like you could have done 400 square metre sections instead of 800 square metre sections. That would have changed the dynamics.
Whereabouts for those ones?
Your Pages Road one, they're pretty...
Look, if you had 400 metre sections there, you'd have court case after court case from the neighbours. So Pages Road is not for smaller, it's bigger sites, 800 to 1,500 square metres a site. It is not high density living.
I think what I'm trying to say is that we lack a plan. While we have a district plan, we actually lack a plan of where things will go.
Yeah. But when we come to you, when the developers and landowners come to the council with proposals, because you lack a plan, you always just say no. So why? Because you don't have a plan, it affects developers. It's not our fault you don't have a plan.
Yeah, but also it's currently, we're looking in the revision mirror again. So what I'm trying to do is look forward in that there's such a thing as butting up against the rural land in terms of land of significance. That's what really, I think, didn't help us at all. So, but when you stand back and you look up north, now north, somehow they seem to be able to convert the rural land into sections. And I still wonder that. I still go, how come, what's the landing called? Highly productive land, right? You can't tell me that the land around Ashburton isn't any different to our land. Yet they seem to be able to put houses on it. Yet for some reason we can't.
No, but why? Well, is that an in-house problem or what's?
I'll just jump in. So my advice to the council, the visitors and the community is that's because we don't have good evidence of demand. Like the demand fundamentals in Ashburton are just so easy to spell out. The demand fundamentals in Timaru are a little bit more complicated. Like we have a more complex machine to demonstrate demand. Now, I think that the challenge you're putting down there is really great because it's how do we get away from saying we grew 0.2% per annum for 30 years, so that's what we're going to do, and actually go, what is the demand that is embedded in that, and that's price points, for employer and labour inputs to industry. And so it's like, how do we actually get that evidence so that we can go to any of these legal arenas and say we've got the demand to justify overcoming that barrier?
Well, the thing is, we've never had any land of scale to meet demand. So, once again, if you haven't got lots of cars on the car yard, you can't sell them all. If we haven't got 100 sections available, we can't sell to 100 people that come along. You've got to be a step ahead of the game. We've never ever had,
100%.
If Chris rings me and he's stressing out because they've got no sections to buy off me. And they've got buyers galore, but we keep going on about this demand and this and that. It's just a load of shit. Let's just get it out there and, we just have to create it, make it happen.
Look,
otherwise we're going nowhere.
I don't think we'd disagree. So we've looked at some court cases up around Auckland that have pushed through these barriers, and they do it through identifying this demand and getting away from your evidence of demand being a stats projection, and instead creating this qualitative and this quantitative. It's like pinpoint quantitative evidence, which is what we're trying to start here, so that you can break through those constraints, because those are just planning constraints, and so they're kind of the easier ones to...
You're right, Ryan. What we've done in the past is we've looked in the revision mirror and we've predicted what goes forward, and what we haven't done is get the real analytical grunt sitting with it in terms of the economists going, what is really going on here? And I think if we had have done that more thoroughly, then you potentially would have had a different plan coming out the other side. Now, to get the pieces of land of quantum, you're virtually butting up against turning a significant farm, into residential. Now, that's where the economist has got to come in to actually help to actually forecast out that this demand is actually there. And when people say, well, there's demand in Ashburton, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Sorry, my speech is not so good today. And that starts driving itself. And once you get one started, you're on your way. It starts building itself. And we've got ourselves into a bit of a trap of actually looking far too much in the revision mirror, and we've got to look a lot stronger going forward and get the right skill base sitting with us to actually look at how you do that.
It's still, this is the reason we're here, and this is where the government direction's going, because a lot of the impediments around planning and development are enshrined in the RMA, and all the, like the regional plans and standardisation, lack of standardisation of zoning and everything. And so this new RMA, I know we're working towards it, but we should be working towards it quicker, because the regional plans and standardisation of zonings and national standards are all changing. They're going to be reduced significantly and allow for a lot of those impediments to either not exist or be significantly reduced.
One thing you want to caution yourself on here is that the planning constraints are the easiest ones to overcome, because they are simply rules that can be changed when you demonstrate sufficient benefit on the other side of the ledger. You guys need to move through this really quickly and get that demand data at that particular level to justify the vision that you have, 2 to 6 months to generate, and then you've got to figure out how to foresee the demand for your infrastructure, and then coordinate it with the other infrastructure providers, and then get the funding tool conversation on. So we can't spend a whole lot of time on the demand stuff. We need to really tuck into that, because that's kind of the easiest one. And this is kind of what Glenn was talking about, is that eventually you're going to end up having this funding conversation, and that's going to be hard and important, but luckily we're not going to be having it within the RMA, which always obscured the funding conversation. So it's going to be a better conversation, and that's one of the things I'd be interested in, any views on how we can have a quality funding conversation between stakeholders and the community and the council. But yeah, I just wanted to step back a little bit and show us the sequence of constraints that we need to work through, and why the demand one we should really just be tucking in. It's the easiest one to change because it's just rules. We've got some funner, chunkier problems that we need to grapple with pretty quick too.
Thanks everybody. Just heading into the we've touched on it a wee bit there, and the comment I'd like to make too is big thanks to Stacey. This is a district-wide view. There are opportunities, especially as Stacey mentioned, out in Temuka, Geraldine and beyond as well. So that third question there around how council can best support communities' aspirations, it's a number of things have been touched on around the table. Glenn spoke around the development contribution policy. Glenn that way spoke about that. Glenn this way spoke about the rates differential and the rates review in the CBD, which I know is in front of council. Stacey's spoken around resetting FDAs. Glenn again spoke with deferred zoning, etc. Any other comments across those or others that hasn't been touched on already by Elliot's summary there before? How can council best support communities' aspirations? Mayor.
Well, I'll speak on behalf of Geraldine. Aurora Station Road, that's where the future is right, I reckon, down there for residential development. I often think one thing, the community's aspirations, it's in living in Geraldine, I've often sort of kind of come to the conclusion, like the council's pretty good, like my dealings with the council from a Geraldine perspective with the combined sports and stuff has actually been very positive and constructive. But I've often thought that the Geraldine fight's pretty hard, but your Temuka and your Pleasant Points, that sometimes that their aspirations, like it all just seems to be Timaru focused, a lot of the conversations, and I used to always think that a lot of people in Geraldine were overdoing that, but there is an element of that to the truth. I mean, the fact that Stacey brought it up, but we do have these other areas. And we look at Christchurch and how Rolleston supports Christchurch and Rangiora supports Christchurch and West Melton and Lincoln, but we don't have that conversation around those areas. So I'd like to think that sometimes the ability to tap in, because I don't know, but what is the people of Pleasant Point, what are their aspirations? What are the Temuka's aspirations? Pretty gutsy, couldn't make it, but those sort of things as well. And I think to feed into, because we are a district, and and potentially Flatland, potentially Temuka, Pleasant Point and Geraldine are the commuter towns. It might be to do that and have a conversation with central government about just getting those two roads dual carriageway. but just, I don't know, I often think that, communities' aspirations and also talking to the right people in those communities as well. I think sometimes there's a lot of people who don't don't really fill out all the forms online and go through the whole process. I think sometimes just going out there and knocking on, talking to people and just listening. Yeah.
One of the jewels in our crown that we overlook, that is Timaru Hospital. We should be actually supporting that so much more than we do as a community and pushing harder to get that hospital to grow, because people look at that and when they're making a decision where to actually retire to, that is in their thinking. And that hospital we should be pushing harder for it to become a bigger regional hospital that should be doing work for Oamaru, Ashburton and us. Now, it's a bit tricky with Ashburton because they're so close to Christchurch, but there's something in that we have always missed a trick on as well. And while I was CE there, we were held up as one of the best, but the facility really is not up to it. And that's something we've got to think about as well in this whole context, because you don't want to lose that. If you let that diminish, then again, people will start moving.
That ties to the reform opportunity. If you think of, probably under 20 councils across the country is actually an opportunity. If we're Ashburton through to Waitaki, there's some, natural hubbing, and then you can rethink actually how government provides, services. A lot of our stuff is actually in the southern model outside of policing and a couple of others, and so I think those sort of things will mature over time once you get that scale of area. Yeah.
Just on that too, it's perfect timing. We are going through a master plan, with Timaru Hospital hat on, master planning process for our 20-year plan, because a new hospital will be built in 20 years' time. But significant work is going on in that area. I support that, and I can tell you significant investment will be put into our hospital and surrounding campuses over the next 5 to 20 years. So perfect timing to be having that conversation around supporting that vision too.
I was just going to back up the hospital one. I fully support that. And just thinking what you're speaking, John, is to Muki, Geraldine, etc. I wouldn't know without looking at the data, but often some people can actually want to live in a slightly smaller community in some of those areas. If you're going to try and grow them, you may want to think about that. Like, I still look at it, the Rolleston of Christchurch. Why can't we do the Rolleston of Timaru? And it's planned, Pleasant Point Highway out that way, and get all your dual laneways. You've got people that can live in those littler communities. We can house our staff there, and industrial land on the seaside of the main road. Go for gold. All we need is a framework, and what we haven't had is that framework, and that's what Ashburton's had. They've had land that is going into residential planned years ahead, and the landowners actually know that's happening. It's a supply and demand situation. So if you're not going to get people wanting to buy the sections if they're not there, if you know your land's moving into residential in 5 years, 10 years, we're looking at a 30-year spatial plan, so it's just my 2 cents.
Yeah,
And also, when we're thinking about that, when we become a unitary, we'll be responsible for our own public transport. Our my way doesn't go to Pleasant Point. Our my way doesn't go to Temuka. Actually, if you're going to think about that area from Washtake to Pleasant Point, you're going to have to put public transport up there. And I'll tell you what, that would actually change things quite significantly again.
Well, I think my way goes to Kennells Road at the moment, but I think what the guys are saying about Temuka is quite right. Like we are developing in Temuka, and we've got a large subdivision finished there, and we're doing another one there. But with going forward on that flat land in Timaru, as we go forward, that'll be just a natural progression that people will go into Temuka, Pleasant Point, because we're getting closer and closer and closer all the time. So all of a sudden we're going to be right up near Seadown. So living in Temuka is going to be quite attractive because you're only 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes from basically Timaru. So that's just going to be a flow-on effect if we go forward and expand. Maybe not so much for Geraldine because that's a bit further away, but Temuka and Pleasant Point will definitely benefit from us moving forward out at Washtake. For commercial properties, maybe a supermarket, you might get more shops and what have you, but that'll just be a flow-on effect as we get bigger and bigger and bigger and everyone moves out that way.
Yeah, this is a very, very heartening conversation for a Temuka boy. And I'm pleased that Stace, you brought it up initially, and as Nigel say, I've been advocating for more and more take up of that flat land in Temuka, which Rhino's done a great job just around the corner from me. And more little sold stickers standing up there. I know he wants to sell me one. But this opens up a larger question about council's role even outside of development, because being councillor of the Pleasant Point Temuka ward, Pleasant Point's been going through a lot of challenges the past few years in terms of school zoning, for example. So the people that live in Pleasant Point, a good number of them work in Timaru, and they travel back and forth out of Pleasant Point. And when the ministry started talking about high school zones in Timaru, it caused a lot of upset in Pleasant Point because people would want to live there but send their kids to school in Timaru, to Boys High and Girls High in particular, and to Ron Carley and the likes, but that that was their community of interest. Timaru was their community of interest, but they wanted to live in Pleasant Point, and when it was under threat that they could no longer go to those schools, they could see, what's the point in living in Pleasant Point? And then, of course, fewer people live in Pleasant Point, and fewer people move to Pleasant Point. There's fewer kids growing up in Pleasant Point. It threatens their primary schools. So there's this wider conversation then on how does council support the things that we know that also influence their living in the towns that they want to live in. And I'm not sure what the solution is there, but from a council perspective, but development helps to provide evidence that could be taken to the Ministry of Education, for example, if they try to do it again, because we all know they will. They love to tell you what to do, don't they? And out in Temuka, and living in Temuka, and looking at the traffic to and from every morning and every evening, there's a hell of a lot of people that have chosen to live in Temuka, that work in Timaru. Lots of people in each of your businesses here in council as well. So, again, heartened to see that the smaller towns are part of this conversation.
I'll just jump in real quickly here. Sorry.
No.
But the spatial planning process involves interaction with the Crown, and they want us to be interacting with their asset management plans. I was kind of surprised by that, but that was the feedback we got from MFE officials, is actually they want to tuck in to this process, and they want to get their asset management planning linked with sort of districts' development and growth vision, which I think is really heartening and really important. It shows why the interaction with Crown agencies and broader utility providers, health and so forth, is really important.
In the past 9 months since I've been on the council, I'd have to say this is one of the more stimulating conversations that I've experienced, and that's not putting down the others. But this is the sort of stuff that's so important that we get a grip of, and we do get a common vision for the district. I just want to take us back to the start. I got really excited in the first couple of minutes when the word "we need more jobs" it was said. And I'm of an older generation, and my generation will be gone in the next 15 to 20 years. The generation coming behind us is smaller in number. So if the Timaru district doesn't have new people coming in to the district, we're going to be shrinking. And I stand to be corrected on this, but I understand the hospital funding is based on population. So you have less people, you're going to have less health services. So there's a spiralling downward pressure on some important services. So I don't want to lose sight of anything you've discussed here, but I love never forget about the fact we need more jobs. If you have more jobs, you'll have more people to buy the houses and to do the other things and to share the cost of a vibrant community. One of the things I learnt some years ago, and I didn't live in Timaru, I came here in 2001, was that Timaru is one of the most attractive places to raise families. We can have all the other exciting words, but it was brought to my attention by people who didn't live here. They said it's so central to so much. Within 2 hours, you're in Dunedin, you're in the Mount Cook, you're in Christchurch. And we have so much here to offer families. I've got grandkids here. I'd love to see them to stay on. But they won't stay on just because they can buy a house. They've got to stay on because they've got a job. So don't forget about the importance of creating an environment to entice businesses to grow that are currently here and to see new businesses come in. Because that's one of the reasons I'm sitting around this table, because I want to see something, it's an emphasis on new jobs, and then you'll hold your young people.
Thanks very much, Graham. You've touched on, and I think John Wilson, right at the very start, touched on the fundamentals or the foundations that we've got here. That central location, for the size that we are, you look at the health provision that we've got with 2 hospitals, some of the shortest waiting lists in the country around access to MRIs, those sorts of things. The quality and diversity of the secondary school and even the primary school and young children education that we've got. We've got a port, we've got an airport, main trunk line, State Highway 1, all of those things. And those are foundations that are solid, and this opportunity around stepping into, a framework that is, well, what about this? Why not? How can we do this? That's what this is all about. And I think the inputs that's come out today from everyone around the table have been well received and well noted as well. So, the stepping forward around, that next question is around how council can best engage stakeholders in the wider community. I think, as you said, John, the days of the survey, it's the face-to-face stuff. It's getting out into our communities and talking to those. A lot of people, they're busy doing what they're doing, and it's important that we make time collectively, individually, to have those conversations across our community around, well, what does Temuka look like in the next 50 years? What's key for you guys? How does that look for the broader district, right across into Geraldines and beyond as well? But, those key foundations are certainly there. So that last question, I'm wary of time. I'm chairing and timekeeping. We've got 30 minutes, but we've got plenty of time. But anything else in that, how council can best support communities and aspirations, before we probably just touch into question 4, and then we can have a wee bit of wrap up around the table if there's any further comments to be made. So,
Nigel, just make
please.
a comment on infrastructure. I think actually our approach to water will better support growth, while some councils have maintained water infrastructure inside councils. Actually having independent directors and a commercial entity focused on water will actually work better towards providing the infrastructure in a more timely manner, I believe. And actually there's a fair chance that where it sits within councils that will hinder growth, because it's a different lens. And I've seen in the past where, and actually Kennells Road's an example where we should have put water infrastructure in, sat within delegations, didn't even come to council as far as decision making, and then of course a few years later you have issues around consenting of septic tanks and holding tanks and all those sort of things that should never have been an issue. But I think actually our approach to water, and hopefully eventually with the amalgamations of councils and a water entity across the 4 or 5, actually I think that'll be the appropriate way to support growth, because it'll be done around demand, the need, as opposed to the specific affordability or pressure that sits within an elected democracy.
The other thing just to touch on too, when we talk about growth, demand, prosperity, those underlying things around whether it's water, people, infrastructure. The other one is on power as well. We sit, the generation that sits on our doorstep, it's about 1,800, 2,000 megawatts. We use about 250 of it. And the current environment, there's another 2,800 megawatts slated within the fast track around solar farms and developments right on our doorstep. And our opportunity to make sure that we are fully aligned with that is front and centre as well. You've got to have the water, you've got to have the people, you've got to have the power, and you've got to have the infrastructure to be prosperous. So again, another foundation. You'll get sick of me talking around that word, but it is, they're sitting there, and we've got a huge opportunity to take advantage of those. Pete, did you want to? Okay, cool. Council best support these questions that we've asked today. You'll head away, I'm sure, while you're sitting having your coffee later on and go, gee, wish I said that. Someone's counting me out on purpose. So, the connection's made now, so please keep that front of mind. Just touch on that, how council can best engage stakeholders. We touched on it before. Forums like this, individual one-on-ones, utilising existing networks, those sorts of things. Any other comments? Obviously, there's a lot of coalface people in the room. You're hearing and seeing things as the things that, council can potentially do different in that regard around the engagement. What's not working?
I think the pleasing bit is that we're actually having these conversations. Like if we go back to the growth management strategy, it was all about the data, and then there's an engagement policy through the paper and that. But as John mentioned, like engagement from the public and the people that probably are pulling most of the levers in the district. It's about direct engagement, and so well done to Council for Aaron and Elliot in particular. I know they've been out and about, and hopefully it's the start of a new vision. And I think that just keep it going. But I mean, your transport operators, some of your key CBD people, your Thompsons and Alpine Building, like that, they're really good examples of people that are doing things in the district, and lots of Ryan and Rooney. So that's where rubber's hitting the road in terms of where's the demand coming from, what does that demand look like, and then what does council need to do to enable and get out of the road, sort of thing. So we understand that there's a framework that you have to work within. The framework's changing. Hopefully it's more enabling. This discussion is hopefully enabling a vision rather than just doing something to tick a box.
I think the thing I'd say too is that, you know, the invite now, you're at the table, you will be at the table moving forward. I think I can say that pretty strongly. You know, the input, the comments you've made today are exactly what's needed in this process. So, you know, to take back to what Stacey said around the resetting of the FDAs and some of those other things, the framework that is needed, it's important that all of you continue to be heard and at the table as that's formed. So,
I was, question 4 there, one thing that I've seen starting to happen, because I guess the way I sort of float around the traps a bit, engaging stakeholders. I think one area, we talk about a lot of infrastructure and social infrastructure with what's all happening with the sporting facilities has been great, with what Rooney Group did at Fraser Park and what the council's been doing up at the stadium and whatnot, and then other things been happening around. But one thing I'm seeing in the education space, don't talk about educational infrastructure, and we fought pretty hard for the Polytech, no doubt, but I'm seeing with the high schools and that now, the international student market is obviously a big growth area for them, which feeds into Graham there. You know, it is a great place, and I used AI to help me for this thing with Timaru Girls High there at one stage, but it picked up when we talk about a safe port or harbour, we're actually a safe area to send your kids internationally to. So I think one area of conversation that the council potentially could have with its wider community is in that educational space with the high schools. You know, because I think the Ministry of Education, having worked with them on a job, it's just unbelievably. And so it feels like to me the problems have to be fixed from the inside out, and some of these schools might need a little bit more support and clout in the sense that they are trying to work with the Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education comes up with 1,000 rules, whereas, you know, you get James Meagher's, we had them at Geraldine High, and they're able to make it happen, you know, and actually doing that. And some counsellors and stuff, learning what's happening in that space, in that international student space. How can we support you? What can we do? What needs to be, how can we get in your scrum and start pushing? So it's not there. So we've not got individual schools all doing their thing, which is great, but we've got the backing of the community, and I think that engaging those stakeholders, there'd be some very key stakeholders, of which I think the council can just add some weight to their conversations with the Ministry of Education. And the current government has got I forgot, I did know it, but whatever they want to turn international students into, you know, whatever, turn it to $1 billion industry, whatever they want to do, I can't remember, something like that, but they really want to grow it. So there's real motivation there, and that could be an area that we grow, creates jobs, brings new people to our district, supports our schools, keeps the roles full. So that's my bit on question 4.
I think one of our impediments, and I've repeated this a couple of times to the councillors around the table, is the Ministry of Education are using old outdated data from Stats New Zealand that clearly is not correct. If you go back to when Pleasant Point's high school closed, they basically espoused the fact that we were in decline, we will be continue to be in decline, and our secondary schools will be declining in their numbers. That has not been true. It's never been true, and even more so now. And I know we have people on the other side of the picture saying that this might be just a bubble, but I know for a fact that the demand in our very, very good secondary schools has been significant. Right down to self-funding Year 9 classes because of that demand. And so when you've got the Ministry of Education telling you this, the stats from Stats New Zealand trying to back up a completely different scenario, it makes it very difficult when obviously anecdotally and actually seeing it visually, we've got expanding young kids in numbers. And it's good to know, would be not really good to know exactly where that's coming and what's driving that demand, but it is significant. Going back to when I was spent a lot of time as a chair of board of a school, specifically Roncalli, the overseas students were a significant impact on the bottom line to help that school grow. A Catholic integrated school is very different from public schools because they're very beholden on the bishop to get their funding. So they had to be very, very, pivot very significantly to get what they needed to do to grow that school. But I see that demand has dropped significantly around the schools now. It's whether they're not driving or it's harder to do, but that was a significant driver for economic growth in the schools and for the community.
Rhino, we'll go to you, and then we might, for the sake of time, we might just go around the room, just if there's any closing comments before we finish up.
Well, basically mine's a closing comment, but I think the good thing about it, all the councillors know what the group of us are after. But the one thing I've always found when we talk about it all the time, we talk about it and nothing happens. So the one thing that we really need to do is actually act on it, rather than just talk about it, and then in another year's time, we talk about it again and again and again and again and again. And that's the issue, isn't it? Like, we sit here and we're going to leave here and think, well, we got a $12 car parking ticket and we're going to be back next year to talk about the same thing. So the challenge to the council really is to act on it and listen to what we've got to say and let us go move forward.
We've come a long way getting you to the front counter here, to the front desk.
Getting closer and closer.
Yeah, you warmed that seat at the back corner and now you're warming this.
Glenn, can I pop to you? Is there any closing comments or anything you'd like to add?
Not really. I just think it's been a very positive conversation, and touch we can achieve a hell of a lot more. But let's have an attitude of not putting roadblocks in place, and let's make it happen, rather than throwing up all these bloody cones everywhere. Let's just make it all happen and move forward.
I just want to say that the best way to get engagement from everyone is from the community and stakeholders is to gather together, listen. And I think it was mentioned before, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should be listening double the time that we talk, I believe. So we just need to listen to people, but more than that, when we get some great ideas from the community and stakeholders, we act upon it. Because I hear people saying, well, I'm not interested. I said, well, you're not interested. They say, well, no one listens. So, we want to get that apathy away, and I think, council has to play its role in that, and a big role in that. And I think, if we can start listening more, and I think these sessions are phenomenal. There's great ideas coming out, and I think this has been a great session.
Scotty, I might come back to you as the chair to close up, if that's okay. AJ?
Thanks, Nigel. Look, I've been living here for over 35 years, and it's been pretty much a public sort of facing life that I've had here, and I've been hearing these same conversations for the past 35 years. Exactly the same conversations we're having here today. And I've always been surprised at our inability to move forward and move forward more quickly. And I get frustrated by the conversations that we have. We're a great place to live. And we are a great place to live, and everybody around these tables today understands and acknowledges that. So why is it then that, Ashburton seems to be a go-ahead place, and we've heard in the past that, Oamaru is a go-ahead place, although they're having their own difficulties at the moment. But it's just about getting it done, and so I agree that these sorts of forums where we all sit around and discuss these sorts of things are just so invaluable. I'd like to thank those people who have come along today and actually made the effort to be here. I'm sure there are other people in the community that too could really add to the conversation, and I'd like to see us as we move forward inviting those people again. If they haven't showed up this time, then certainly giving them the opportunity to do that again. But it needs to be ongoing. We can't just say, okay, let's leave here and out, we'll get things done through regulation or whatever. We need to be having these conversations on an ongoing basis and actually make an appointment and make a date to do it, so that when we come back next time, we can tick some boxes about the things that we have done and the things that we haven't done and continue to work on those. So, great conversation, and like I say, great to have you all here to contribute. Thank you.
Thanks, AJ. Maybe even my closing comment might be actually engaging with Elliot and Aaron in terms of what do you need from us in terms of the quantitative side of things that provide the council with the ammunition to really cement that vision that we're trying to achieve, because it comes back to what can be actionable. So we've all got ideas and we're trying to achieve a vision, but what actually helps you guys the most?
Might as well respond to that, which is a great challenge, really. And the challenges that we get to do this our way, kind of like within the parameters of the regional spatial planning process. And so we need to make sure that as officers we're giving the elected members different options about how to capture the community's views qualitatively and crystallise them into a social licence argument that we can present it as this regional spatial plan has been drafted. And so I open mind, I don't have any fixed ideas on that. What's going to help? I think what's going to help is for feedback on what do we need to bring to this kind of type of engagement that makes it even more valuable? What information does the community want to have this conversation to take it to the next level? And vice versa. You guys have talked, you've referred to statistical reviews about, price points and cost inflation from different issues, or like how do we take that to the next level and crystallise it into an actual documented thing. Ultimately, it'll be words on a page, and we can derive that out of a meeting by summarising the notes and so forth. But I think it's a two-way setup where we need to make sure that we turn up at the engagement with the right information, so that we're all singing off the same song sheet, and so there's a ground truthing to the conversation, so that then when we summarise it, we can point to the source material that sort of ring fences it, and then we go, that's actually what the community's vision is, and it was informed by all these things. So it's a fair reflection of reality, and therefore we can advocate for it through the spatial planning process. So I wrote some interesting questions here, but they've all got obvious answers. Go and talk to the people. I'm interested in what we need to do to turn up and make those conversations really valuable, so that we can crystallise it into, an expression of the community's vision and demand.
And does that extend to things like lost opportunities, or for, say, Washdyke, for example, the missed opportunities that inquiries have come and gone, or is it more like in Roland's situation, the price of land and what they're seeing in terms of market demand, both in land size and location, and from Chris, what he's seeing in terms of the same?
Both. One of the things that I observed in our current LTP is a lack of, and I'll use a wanky word, segmentation of demand. So our demand sort of evidence in the LTP is really basic. It basically says, 0.2 to 0.7, depending on where you look, growth per annum, and then noting reducing household size and increased industrial/commercial demand. That's it. That's the extent of segmentation of the LTP's understanding of what the different industries in particular, but residential and employers and employees, what are they demanding? I mean, we're just not going to get anywhere with an asset management plan responding to demand that is that bland. And so it's how are we going to take it to the next level of unpackaging demand segmentation, for a wanky word. But I've got some cool questions, so
I'd just like to acknowledge to the council and to Thompson's. I was up at, got lucky enough to have a tour through this new stadium the other week, and just want to say what a fantastic facility that's going to become once it's all completed. I've spent a bit of time up at the stadium over the last 6 months or so, and it's such an absolute hive of activity up there with sports going on bloody every day of the week. So I just say congratulations on what's coming there. Stonewood's come on board as one of the sponsors for that, and I've got young kids myself, so we look forward to many, many more, hopefully warmer winters up there with netball and things. And my final question to the council is, obviously Ryan and Gary are doing all this development in Timaru. What happens when their private helicopter crashes and they're no longer doing it? What's the council going to do to keep developing land? Because if Ryan and Gary decide no more, they're not going to bother anymore, it's too much hard work, who then is going to develop all this land in Timaru and the surrounding areas? Because no one else really is, are they, Ryan?
No, and perfect, because I was thinking that question. My question to this group was around competition, and some of the things that you're seeing in Rollaston's and Ashburton's is a different competitive tension that's helping growth as well. And so what is the appropriate mechanism to have competition within the market, within industrial? Generally, there's a few players. Within residential, generally, there's a few players. And probably to put it wider, what role should council or holdings play in those markets? And it can be, I've always thought, and I've talked to some of you about this before. We've looked at different land packages or land with the ideal that actually we would hold and feed to the market at the appropriate time, so it's more economic. But what are some of the things we can do?
My personal opinion is that council or TDHL certainly has a role to play in trying to realise a vision and for the district. So that's when we're having these conversations, and when you're thinking about a spatial plan and a master planning, they should be at the forefront of some of that and have some of those strategic land holdings that help enable those next steps. So where could they buy in terms of whether it be currently rural land that's in the appropriate location that can help get something going, whether it be infrastructure or just growth feeds growth. And so to me, if they're at the start of it and they've realised some of the uplift, because as soon as things are identified, there's an uplift in the land value, and potentially that's where TDHL is supporting the district, because that's remaining somewhat public, and it can help fund that growth. So it's always dynamic in that you need multiple players. There are a few players locally, but TDHL, in my opinion, does have a role to play, and I think that's good.
Just to note, since I'm sitting next to him, we don't wish for that helicopter crash to come anytime soon either.
Thanks very much. John, any closing comments? We'll keep moving.
Oh, yeah, just quickly, Chris, thanks for that with the stadium. And I'm just going to say what I said to these kids at Timaru South School when I took them up there the other day. There's a couple of things, in OJ, I've always said if you can visualise it and you believe it, make it happen, but there's one thing that I've always felt with Timaru, and sometimes we don't give ourselves, we don't often feel we deserve it. And I think that's a big thing, that you visualise something, you believe in something, and then you've also got to feel that you deserve it. You deserve these things, you know. And I'll give an interesting thing about the stadium. Like, I think 11 years ago when Gary kicked it off down there at the Event Centre, okay, this would be an interesting number that no one will know. Since Waimate Event Centre, this is how the district obviously believed it needed something in the sporting space, between Waimate Event Centre, Craighead, Roncalli College, we did out there, the Stadium 8 and Geraldine High. There's been a delivery of 14 new basketball courts in the last 11 years. And that's an example of a vision by community leaders, and then a pathway put together, and then activation, and then it's all created, and the fact that I think the community felt it deserved it, which we do. Fraser Park's another example. So we've done it. We've done it, OJ. Like, it has been done, but now it's in different areas, but there is a formula there. And I visualise it, believe it, and then believe you deserve it.
Thanks, John. Yeah, it's good being here today, and I reckon we do need to be more proactive. There is a lot going for the area. Staff we've had move in can witness to it, and we want more staff for our company, and we want to create more jobs. We've got plans to start more businesses in the next 5 years, and at the moment there is risk of them going to Ashburton or just because of industrial parks, and we've got quite a few staff that actually already travel from Ashburton to Timaru pretty much every day. So I don't know whether it's in the council's realm to be able to get out and talk to people or do some surveys, but if you can get some data from other people, like it literally, if you actually ask people list down 3 things of why you're staying in Timaru, or list down a couple of things what would make you move out of Timaru, all of a sudden you've started getting some data of what you need to change to be able to get the place to grow. That's been good discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Stace, any final comments?
No, it's great to all be in the room, and there's probably 4 or 5 other developers that I think are missing today, and that's like the Williamson family, Shirtcliffs out at Geraldine, Gutsy, obviously he was supposed to be here, the Hurst family that are looking to do developments out at Point. Like, there are some significant other players, that lower level family developers that are out there, and we need to engage with them, and we need to start looking at how we support those initiatives, because they are great, and the not just the district plan but the RMA stopped a lot of those growth thinking. But we as council need to be better too. So if we're going to get maps out and we're going to start putting circles around things, we need to build that framework to support those future developments. And yeah, we need to be better at doing that and working out how we can future-proof growth in this community. And so, yeah, look forward to further conversations. I think it's important around education and health, and obviously on the health conversation, I'm here to support that 100% and can do pretty presentations as much as you like about population growth and the development on that site. So, yeah, let's keep talking. It's great. Thank you.
No, it's been a very good powwow, but we do live in a rapidly changing world, and we probably need Scott to host one of these every 6 months, certainly after the November election.
Thank you for everyone's attendance here today. There's always that saying, we live in interesting times. Well, when you look what's happening around the world at the moment, it's more than just interesting. But we've got the perfect storm that's coming our way in terms of transformational change with this government. RMA is just one part of it, devolution of regional councils and moving to unitaries. And this is supposed to drive fundamental change around making us more efficient and effective. We've got 2 years to do what we can as a council with you guys to set us up for a better future going into that unitary environment, and we've got some really good people at the front driving that and sitting up the front here, and I can easily say that in my nearly 15 years on council, we couldn't be better fronted in terms of the skill factors that we have and the direction and cohesion of a council to really drive that. So we really need to get on board and push that. Thank you.
Hi. Firstly, thank you for coming along, and I'd really like to probably spend some more time sitting down and talking with you. It sort of just feels like it's just got the wee gloss on the top and not really much in depth. And the other interesting thing to me anyhow was that in preparing for this, I sort of did a lot of brainstorming with myself, and most of the things that I sort of thought about have actually been covered in some sort of way through the discussion. One thing that I just feel still needs to be teased out is what investments are still going to make sense if or when we become a more integrated region, and the local boundaries that we've got now aren't going to be there, because that to me is something that has to be sort of put into the picture as well.
I think one of the big battles that we have in Timaru is we lose all the young ones. And the young ones don't own houses. So, while we're stagnant in our numbers and demand, you think we're still needing houses because we're still filling those numbers up because the numbers of the young ones are leaving, but we're still gaining people from out of town who are coming back. And a lot of people coming back, I'm selling a lot of sections we sell a lot to out-of-towners coming back into town, or people coming to live here because they love it. But I think, it's another issue. We can't, keeping those younger people here, whether it's because they can't get on the property ladder or other problems, but I think that's another thing we have to look at. But for me personally, I just think it's a no-brainer. We're going to have to start whether people are too scared to make some of the council, the workers, not the councillors, because the councillors are quite proactive, but the people on the bottom floor who are working, are they too scared to make the decisions to actually maybe work harder and start, designing these things and getting them done, or they just come to work each day and it's Groundhog Day? So, I think we just got to act on it and move forward.
Thank you. And final comments. Thank you. I'll just take that back.
I'm getting one made that's getting
No, look, thank you. Thanks for your engagement. And look, again, I echo Councillor Burt's words. I think we've had some frustration in council, but Aaron and Elliot have come with a fresh lens, which is going to help us move forward. But we do have sort of, a very tight window, and we talk about getting around the table again in 6 months, and that's fine. But actually, we've got a really short window, so we need to do this in the coming months to get this done. So we do set ourselves up for success. But again, thanks for all the passion. I know, and I've seen some of the frustration within, some of you guys, eyes and the conversations we've had over the years. But I mean, just going back, there is some stuff, people have tried some stuff. Like John, I remember talking to you, and what you tried to do into CBD, and the properties across the road. That was actually to get some, very early on, and maybe they're shot from the hip or not, but they were trying to get development into the CBD. So, and Glenn, you talked about the CBD stuff around those restraints around property ownership. I remember first month in the job talking to Chamber of Commerce about one of the main constraints, in my view, that sat within the CBD, and it was the ownership of the properties within the CBD. That's changed a little bit, but it probably needs to change some more. But great to see some really willing parties in the room, and I think we can
we can turn something around pretty quick, because we have to.
I put out a couple of plugs. You guys are influential. So council has been actually, in the last couple of years, moving towards being in a better financial position. And we've been actively doing that, and I think it's starting to show dividends. The Alpine sale, can we keep talking about that? Because if you think about it, bringing 130 million, whatever it is going to be, into the district in terms of capital and freeing up capital to do some of the stuff we're talking about has got to be thought about really thoroughly. And also, the other one that we're in the midst of is this Head Start. If we actually become bigger, the whole revenue and scale of this organisation grows, and you start thinking about the savings that that brings just by running 4 or 5 councils. That'll actually assist a lot. So people need to start thinking about that and supporting in terms of those changes.
Well,
like I'm running for mayor.
Maybe you are. Maybe you are. It's pretty much all been said, so I just added a couple of things. Firstly, on the school engagement, and Stacey mentioned some other developers, just to bear in mind, and for people who are watching, why wasn't I invited? This is a bit of a test scenario we're doing yet, and we do have a list, long as your arm, of people that we want to engage with. But just in case it's not on the list, please feed it back and say, make sure you talk to these people, because we do want to get all of that, because that forms the evidence that we need to change what we want to change. I'll just take the opportunity again to thank you very, very much for today. Very much appreciated. And I hope you are as excited as I am about where we're heading to with a spatial plan that fixes a hell of a lot of what's been broken. That's the exciting thing for me. Also, the fact that we have these gentlemen here. This Development and Growth Committee started 9 months ago, and other than having to learn an entirely new language that planners and lawyers speak, the amount of work that's gone on just to get to this point has been extraordinary, and we're very, very lucky to have them. So recognition to you, to the both of you, and thanks for what you're doing. And I know what you've still got to do in a very, very small window. It's exciting. It actually is exciting times. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Scotty. Guys, do you want to sort of summarise, or even next steps for the attendees here around getting back in touch, or?
My exchange with Glenn, I think, was what I'm looking at next steps-wise, is providing the elected members with some advice as how we structure this, take it up a notch, and make sure that we're providing information to the people we're engaging with so they can, lift it up to the next level. Great feedback, and some lines of inquiry, some pretty obvious ones. Yeah.
That's excellent. The connections are made anyway. You've got email addresses and phone numbers, I'm sure. So, look, thanks very much, everybody. And 5 minutes overdue. Terrible facilitation by me, isn't it? So thanks very much, everybody, and have a great day, eh?